Likutei Sichos, Chelek Chafei, volume 25, the second Sicha for Parshat Chayei. This Sicha is an explanation in a seeming discrepancy in the narrative of the story of Eliezer going to find a wife for Yitzchok. Also, it will give us a deeper insight and true meaning of what the word Hatzlacha, success, really means. This is generally speaking, and particularly as it pertains to the Shluchim of the Rebbe. Please note that this parsha, that is Parshas Chayei, typically is the parsha of Kinus HaShluchim. As a quick introduction, to better familiarize ourselves with some of the concepts that we mentioned in the Sicha, so we know that one of the rules in Rashi is that Rashi addresses every matter that needs to be addressed. Anytime there is seemingly a question or discrepancy, Rashi addresses it. However, once Rashi explains something, Rashi expects us to remember it, at least in the same Chumash. And therefore, if the matter that comes up later, even though it seems to be problematic, but Rashi has already addressed it, or from what he's addressed in the past, we could understand and answer the question in this place here, then Rashi doesn't bother to explain it because he expects us to, and he relies on what he explained in the past. It would be best to familiarize ourselves with the verses, an entire narrative. I'll just go over some of them that are crucial for the Sicha. Remember, when Avrohom says, he commissions Eliezer, he says, you shall go El Artzi Ve'Meladati, you should go to my land, you should go to my birthplace, and there you shall take a wife for my son Yitzchok. Eliezer says to him, what happens if the woman doesn't want to go? Right? Should I take your son elsewhere? And to find a shidduch, to find his wife? And Avrohom says to him, no. I warn you, do not take him anywhere else. Why? Because Hashem yishlach malachei lefanecha. Hashem will send His angel before you, ahead of you, and there you will certainly find a wife. You will take a wife from my son. Now, later, when Eliezer relates, he recounts to Besuel in much detail the entire story, the entire narrative. He says to him what happened. He says that Avrohom promised him and so on. But there he seems to change it slightly. And he says that Avrohom promised him that Hashem will send Yishlach Malachai Itcha with you. We will see it in the Sicha. Another thing to be familiar with, the idea of Yogaita Umatzasa. The Gemara says that if somebody puts in the effort, Yogaita, you put in the effort to the degree of your Yigia, of toiling, Umatzasa. Now, in the context, it seems to mean you will succeed. However, the true meaning of Mitzia means a find. Well, finding something, for example, a lost object, has absolutely nothing to do and is not contingent on one's effort. The fact of the matter is that if you're walking in the street and you find $100, it has nothing to do with your effort. It has to do with the fact that someone happened to lose it and you happened to chance upon it. So therefore, the explanation is, and this pertains to Torah and mitzvahs and all good things, as the Rebbe explained many times, that Hashem tells us, Yogaita, when you put in the effort, when you toil, you put in your utmost effort, then the level of success is not even corresponding to the amount of effort you put in. It's way, way beyond that, almost in a manner of mitzia, as if it was a finding, as if you just happened to find it, happened to chance upon it. In other words, it's way beyond, disproportionately to the amount, the level of effort that you put in. Find another concept. The Gemara tells us that Hakol bidei shamayim chutz miyirei shamayim. Everything is in the hands of everything. Everything that happens in the world is dictated and controlled by Hashem. Except, the Gemara says, and the Gemara enumerates several things, and the leading thing is yirei shamayim, fear of heaven. In other words, one can say and one can expect that I will be adherent to the Torah mitzvahs because that's what Hashem wants. And if I'm not, that means Hashem doesn't want it. No, that Hashem, so to speak, gives over to us. He gives us full autonomous jurisdiction over, and we have to see to make it happen. We have to put in the effort. Another concept to be familiar with, the concept of an eved, a slave. A slave is not an autonomous being. He's not a mitzias b'fnei atzmai. Everything he has, everything he does belongs to his master. Why? Because he's considered to be like an extension of his master. And finally, esoterically or metaphorically, we know that husband and wife, ish v'isha, is a metaphor for Ish is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and Isha is Knesset Yisrael, generally speaking, or each individual Yid. Let's go into the Parsha. So as you already mentioned in the introduction, let's go into the Sicha. As you mentioned in the introduction, when Eliezer was relating and describing to Besuel all the events of him arriving here and how he found Rivka and so on, and describing in detail his mission to find a wife for Yitzchok, he says that when I challenged my master and I asked him, hey, maybe the woman's not going to want to come, what should I do with your son? Should I find him a woman elsewhere? And what does Avrohom say to him? He says, Eliezer says that Avrohom said, Hashem, my God of my fathers, Yishlach malachai itach. He'll send his malach together with you to accompany you and help you find a wife for my son. However, we know the fact is, and the Torah states it, that when Avrohom said it to him, he didn't say Yishlach malachai itach. Rather, he said lefonecha, before you. Why did Eliezer change the expression? Now, you can't say, well, it's just, a word here, a word there, and it's not crucial. Because we already find a precedent for the difference of with or before, with or ahead, meaning something very, very important and having a crucial impact on the entire meaning. Where is that? In the beginning of Parshas Noach, it says, Es ha'elikim hisalech Noach. That Noach walked with God. Noach went with God. And Rashi comments that by Avrohom Avinu, when Avrohom was speaking about God and his relationship with Hashem, he says, Elokim asher hisalachti lefanov, the God that went ahead of him, before him. So Rashi explains, this is not just, saying six of one, a half a dozen of the other. Rather, this has deep meaning. Noach indeed was a tzaddik, but he wasn't a tzaddik like Avrohom. He needed the support, so to speak. He needed to be constantly guided and protected not to slip, and therefore Hashem es ha'elikim, he walked with Hashem. Whereas Avrohom Avinu was able to go b'koiches atzmai, he was, so to speak, self-sufficient in his piety, and he was able to go ahead before of Hashem, so to speak. He didn't need his support. So you see that there is a significant difference if you say with the person or before the person. So the question is, well, if there is something to be addressed here, why isn't Rashi saying anything? The answer is precisely the Rashi we just sourced. Precisely this. Rashi already addressed this, and from there we need to take a moment and analyze it and understand what is the difference between the two. In other words, what is it that Avrohom Avinu said to Eliezer, and what is it that Eliezer was presenting to Besuel? But Rashi has no need to repeat it because Rashi already gave us the explanation. He gave us an idea of the contrast between itcha, with you, or lefanecha, ahead of you. What happened? What does this mean? You see, Avrohom Avinu, when he was directing Eliezer, when he was sending him on a mission, he promised him that Hashem will go ahead of him, meaning everything will be taken care of for him. And we see it, as Eliezer himself described. He had kfitzas haderech. He left the same day and he came the same day. And within a short period of time, he was there. Hundreds, if not thousands of kilometers. And then what do we see? When he was praying, what does it say? Terem kila ledaber. Even before he finished his prayer, and already Rivka was coming out. What does that tell you? That Rivka coming out was not contingent on his prayer. It's not that he prayed and then afterwards Rivka came. Rivka was already coming. Rivka already was divinely sent out of her house to go in that direction even before he started davening. Why did it require that he finishes a davening and then he realizes that she's there? Well, if not, he wouldn't have known that this is the person. When he finishes his prayer, he opens his eyes and she's standing right there, he understood that this is the person. But otherwise, he didn't really do anything. Hashem was making everything happen. And not only that, but moreover, the fact that Rivka agreed to the shidduch, and she agreed very adamantly, and she said, I'm going. Even if you don't want me to go, she said to her parents and her family, I'm still going to go. So adamantly, she never even had a discussion with Eliezer about this. This wasn't even discussed or negotiated. Yet she was so adamant to do it. Where did that come from? That was part of the success that was being guided and delivered from Hashem. The question, that's what Avrohom Avinu meant when he said that Hashem will go ahead of you. He will send a malach ahead of you. Question is, so why did Eliezer deviate? Why did he change? Well, the answer is Eliezer was considering with whom he's having this discussion, with whom who he's talking to. Who was he talking to? He was talking to Besuel. Besuel doesn't appreciate these things. Moreover, he was seeking Besuel's consent as a father, as a family, as parents. In order for that to happen, if he tells him, listen, everything is said and done, it's all over, the Malach already made it happen, look at this fact, look at that fact, look at the other, all this proof that I made it happen, then Besuel can look at him and say, so what do you want from me? Why are you even talking to me? What do you want me for? How do I fit into this picture? It's all done, right? But since he needed to have his consent, therefore Eliezer presented it in a way that it would seem that it's being done, so to speak, on a human level. Where he was doing his part, Hashem was walking with him. The Malach was walking with him to assist him. And therefore, he's asking Besuel, that is, for his consent. He's asking for his cooperation. And this also can help us understand another change, another seeming deviation in the narrative. You see what happened when he when he met Rivka and he asked her for the water and that transpired. Immediately he gave her all these gifts of jewelry, and only after that did he ask her for her name and who she is. However, when it came to the narrative that he's delivering to her father, to Besuel, to the family, what does he say? Oh, I asked her who she is, and then I gave her the jewelry. Why did he do that? Again, because he, in his experience, having heard from Avrohom Avinu that Hashem is Yishlach Malochai Lefonecha, ahead of you, everything's going to be done for you. And then in fact he saw it. He had quit Saderach. And then after that, before he even finishes to pray, and Rivka standing right there in front of him, so he had no doubt whatsoever. However, in the narrative as he's presenting it to Besuel, that it's Hashem, Yishlach Malachai Itcha, with you, Itach, with you. Here, in this narrative, he has to change slightly, because otherwise it wouldn't make sense. Otherwise they can pounce on him, as Rashi says, and say, how did you go give this strange girl, somebody you don't even know, how did you give her jewelry, assume something, not knowing? In other words, they would have looked at it as something very suspicious. Now, although openly, explicitly, Eliezer's deviated a little bit from the lefanecha, before you, ahead of you, to itcha, with you, still yet you can see that in his narrative, in his words, he incorporated this idea that really everything comes from Hashem. Where do you see that? Because when he said, Yishlach malocha yitach, v'hitzliach darkecha, and he will make succeed your way, he will succeed your mission, he will bring success to your mission. Later on in his prayer, what does he say? When he's describing his prayer, he says, I said to Hashem, if you are to succeed, if you are giving to success to my mission. What is the idea of success? What is the true meaning, says the Rebbe, of the word hatzlacha, of the word success? What is the idea of success? Says the Rebbe, success means that it's something that Hashem gives to the person. Where do we see it? If you remember the story of Yosef HaTzadik, where it says, Vayehi Hashem es Yosef. Hashem was with Yosef, Vayehi Ish Matzliach. He was a successful person. And as it says there, Asher Hu Ois, everything he does, Hashem Matzliach. In other words, you always see the association with the word Hatzlacha as it coming directly from Hashem. And likewise over here, when Eliezer says, when they wanted to try to hold Rivka back and delay and kind of hold back in time, Eliezer said to them, no. Al ta'akvu oisi, do not hold me back. Do not delay. But Hashem hitzliach es darki. Hashem had succeeded my mission. In other words, you see success coming directly from Hashem. And the Rebbe says success is even greater, is even more than the idea of Yagaito Metzasa. If you remember in the introduction I explained, Yagaito Metzasa means that you do this much, you do your best, but the Metzia is this much. It's way beyond, disproportionate to the amount of effort you put in. Says the Rebbe that is still somewhat measured. Hatzlacha is something that, why is it measured? Because still you have to put in your effort. In order to get the motzasa, you still have to do your gaita. You cannot say your mitzasi without your gaiti. That's why we say lo gaiti mitzasi al tamim. So there has to be an investment. There has to be a effort from the person, an investment of contribution, of effort from the person. But when it comes to hatzlacha, that is totally contingent on Hashem himself. That is not so much connected to how much a person does or doesn't do. That is only why, by Hashem's discretion, so to speak, Hashem gives hatzlacha. So it comes out that when Eliezer mentions his idea of hatzlacha, in a sense, that's also saying that it's all going to come from Hashem. In other words, although he didn't say the word explicitly, Yishlach malachoi lifonecha, and for as we explain what that means, and he only said Hashem will send his malach with you, but still, by incorporating the idea of hatzlacha, he also incorporated this idea that still it's all coming from Hashem. And that's why you see that even Besuel appreciated that, and that's why when Besuel said, "Oh, Hashem succeeded your way," okay, then he stopped, putting up a argument. He stopped opposing, and he allowed the shidduch to go forward. Why? Because even he appreciated hatzlacha comes from Hashem, and this can help us understand yet another thing in this whole narrative, where it would seem a little odd on the face of it. What happened? When Avrohom Avinu sends Eliezer, and he says to him, Hashem will send a malach ahead of you, and then he says to him with certainty, with absolute, definitive certainty, you're going to take a wife from there. How do you know? The fact is, and as was the case over here too, that in order to marry a woman, she has to consent. And the fact is that every human being has free choice. How did Avrohom Avinu know with certainty that the woman will agree? Maybe not. Maybe not. But this is because Avrohom Avinu knew that Hashem is sending malachai lifonecha, ahead of you. V'hitzliach darkecha, you're going to have hatzlacha. This is therefore beyond anything, even notwithstanding the fact that every individual has free choice. Avrohom Avinu was certain. He had absolute certainty that Rivka will not say no, and that she's going to say yes. And even though there is the possibility, as Avrohom said, technically speaking, that, if the woman doesn't want to go, then you're free of this oath, then you're absolved, right? That's what he said to Eliezer. But still Avrohom had no doubt, because he had absolute certainty that since Yishlach Malachah Lifanecha, and there's going to be Hitzliach Darkecha, that for sure the woman is going to go. Also now, we can appreciate through this, with all this, we can appreciate what the Chazal tell us, Yafa Sichason Shel Avdi Aves V'Terashin Shel Banim. That Hashem, so to speak, it's more pleasing. The Sicha, what is Sicha? The talk, which seems to be even maybe Sicha can be used like for idle talk, right? The narrative, as we see here, that not only it tells us a story of how Avrohom Avinu sent Eliezer, and it goes exactly into all the details once again when Eliezer retells the story. So many seemingly extra psukim. All I had to say was ditto. That Eliezer said, all that happened to me. Right? One verse, 2 verses. Instead, the Torah goes through painstakingly every detail, exactly what happened, what transpired, even though we already know it. Yet, when it comes to halachas in the Torah, when it comes mitzvahs to the Torah, how many times does the Gemara grapple to try to learn out from an extra word, from an extra letter, sometimes from an extra nuance, to learn halachas, crucial halachas, and how to keep the Torah, how to keep Shabbos, and so on. Says that, say the Chazal, that it's, so to speak, it's more pleasing, the Sicha of the servants, of the Avadim, of our patriarchs, even more than the Torah of the children. What does that mean? Because as we said in the introduction, Hakol bidei shamayim chutz me'ir shamayim. Everything, so to speak, is in the hands of heaven. Hashem is in control of everything except for when it comes to observance of Torah and mitzvahs. That is dependent on us. However, the story of Eliezer is entirely in the hands, Bidei Shemayim, is in the hands of Hashem. As it says, He will send a malach ahead of you. He will succeed your way, as we explained. And this is the message over here. That when it comes to Sichosam Shel Avdei Avos, One has to look at the story and see what are the two conditions in order to connect to this source of success. That Yishlach Malachei Lefanecha V'Yitzliach Takecha. Number one, you have to be Avdei Avos. In other words, you're not an autonomous entity. Yes, you do what you can and you use all your talents that Hashem gave you. But at the end of the day, who are you? You're an Eved of Avrohom. You're an Eved of the Avos. And then there has to be Sichoson. What is the true Sicha? The Chazal tell us, Ein Sicha L'Tfilah. When it says in the Torah, Sicha, talk, the true deeper meaning, the holy meaning of it is Tfilah. That you have to recognize that this doesn't come from your own talents, from your own efforts, from your own success, from your own energy and wisdom, but rather that ultimately, as we said before, the Hatzlacha comes from Hashem. And therefore, one has to daven. And when you have that, these two ingredients, then you have the sum total of bitul, and that brings the success. Still, even though, as we said, Yafa Sichason Shalav Da'avis Mitarasin Shalbanim, that the narrative of the servants of the Avis is greater than the Torah itself, but still, where's it written? In the Torah. And it became part of the whole parsha of the Torah. That this makes obvious that the message over here is to each and every one of us. Each and every one of the Banim, of the descendants of the Avis, could reach this level of becoming Avdei Avis. And says the Rebbe, here comes an actual, an implementable directive for each and every one of us, especially to those that have the merit to serve as in the Shlichus of the Avos, of our Avos, that's the Rebbe's, the Rabbi Seder Nisienu of Chabad, in strengthening Torah and spreading and strengthening Yiddishkeit and spreading Torah and mitzvahs throughout all the Yidden. He says that there are those who think that the main objective is I have to do my part. I have to work. I have to put in the effort. What the outcome will be, will there be success? Will there not be success? That is not contingent on me. I'm going to work tirelessly with all my effort, throw myself into it, do the best I can, but I have no control on what that Yid is going to do, and therefore I have no control on the outcome. Says the Rebbe, here comes the lesson from this story, that you have to be an Eved, totally subservient to the Rabbi, totally given over. And when you are in a total existence of Bitul, Avdei Avos, in addition, you daven, you pray for success. You daven that what you're doing should be successful, and you should be mashpia on that yid, and you should succeed with that yid. Then you are guaranteed that Hashem will yishlach malachei lefanecha and v'itzliach takecha. Then you have the guarantee, the assurance that Hashem will send His malach, His help, ahead of you and make things happen, and that you will succeed, as we explained what the word success means. And what's going to happen? What is the end of that pasuk? V'lokachta isha. And you're going to bring a Isha. What is the idea of bringing Isha? As you said in the introduction, you're going to bring Knesset Yisrael. You're going to bring each and every Yid to who? To their rightful husband, that is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Eibishter. By lighting up the world, by giving everybody an excitement and arousal in Yiddishkeit, this will bring that not only will they come close to Yiddishkeit, but they in turn will become Neiris Lahoyer. They themselves will become luminaries to go and bring other Yidden. And this will, of course, assure us the coming of Mashiach, as the Rambam says, that Ifticha Torah, Sheseif Yisrael Lasses Tshuva Miyad Him Nigolim. That for sure, the Yidden at the end will all do Tshuva, and immediately they will be redeemed from this galus. So by you going out to the Yid, by being an Eved, and having the Tefillah, the Sicha Son Shel Avdei Avos, that will ensure that not only will you affect that Yid, but that Yid will affect other Yidden, and this will accomplish what the Rambam says, Shesoif Yisrael Lasis Tshuva.